So, let's remember why we do this. Alec told us it's about these 3 pillars. Energy independence, really important. No more monopolistic regimes who hike the price of fossil fuels. Cheap energy for everybody. That's really important. Renewables are the cheapest energy on the planet. And thirdly, and most importantly, cleaner urban air. And globally, 7 million people die prematurely from air pollution, and 500,000 of those people are children under 5. So, it's with great pleasure that I'd like to announce our next speaker, who has done so much for air quality and has a really, really tragic tale to tell. Would you please welcome, from the Ella Roberta Foundation and Breathe Life, Rosamund Adoo-Kissi-Debrah, CBE. Rosamund. Rosamund and I have met before, haven't we? And you told me your story.
He actually lied to me. You haven't followed me yet on Twitter. I noticed you're following Andrew Neil, but not me. I don't know what that's about.
Look, I did, but anyway, look, this is neither the time nor the place.
I'm very bitter, as you can see.
So look, the first question, Ben, check on that, will you, for me? Tell us about Ella.
I always have to take a deep breath when I am asked it, because Ella's siblings are now 16 and they're in the 6th form, and for her, time has stood still. She was my first, and if she was here, I am in no doubt that she would be in her 2nd year of university, because that's where her peer group are. And I think, when I think about her now, and I always used to say to people, she's incredibly bright. And I think this summer, when my twins came home with A's after A's in their GCSEs, despite the horror they've been through, and I suddenly realised, oh my God, she really was that bright, and she really would have contributed to society. Those of you with children, your firstborn is always special, isn't it? And for me, she always will. I think one thing I'm surprised at, and yeah, it continues to surprise me, that although she's no longer here, the actual love I have for her, that has not changed. I'm always amazed at that. And it's not just me, it's people in Lewisham and Catford. I mean, we're astounded when you're shopping on a Sunday with my son in like Oldie, and I think people's reactions to Ella can be quite extreme. My son kind of looks a little bit wobbly when people, or when, the tears, and I can understand it. And those that knew Ella, even her doctors, we now admit she suffered greatly. And one of the things I have looked at with the war going on, I don't really comment on it, I guess, but I think about all those children who, when either side, by the way, I'm not one who's going to take sides, but I look at when bombs are dropped, and especially when I see children on those nebulizers. And I did actually say to my twins, do not watch any of them, because it will trigger something for you. But for some of them, I think we saw something on Channel 4 News, and my son looked at me and went, they're not going to last, they're breathing just like Ella did. And I think for me, it's just the horrors of breathing. I think it's something everyone in this room takes for granted. We take breathing for granted because it's just something we just do naturally. And I am lucky that as time goes on, the horrors of her fighting to breathe begin to fade a bit, and you begin to remember all the good things, and thank goodness for that. But she will always be my firstborn. She will always be that bright girl. She will always be, the child that got me down to Bournemouth to look at the red arrows for five minutes, and I thought, why are we doing this? And I will always, it is, part of my heart will always be broken, and it's something you have to learn to live with, and it's something I will take to my grave. I never say to people I have 2 children. I have 3 children, and that will remain that way.
So you lived on the North Circular Road?
Absolutely not North Circular, South Circular. Those of you who aren't in London, yeah, I see a nod there. South London.
I apologise unreservedly. Tell us what the coroner said.
Well, the coroner is an incredibly learned man, actually. He was the same coroner that actually sat through the first inquest. And it took, Ella died in February 2013, and her inquest wasn't until September 2014. And the reason being, they were trying to find someone qualified enough to deal with all the medical information. But the second inquest, ultimately what he concluded is, without the illegal levels of air pollution, not only would Ella not have got asthma at all, she wouldn't have died on that fatal night where air pollution was at its highest. And I must say to the audience, Ella wasn't unique. I come from a borough that the asthma, people who get admitted for asthma, were normally the second or the third in London. We are that high. It's just, she was unfortunate, and that's how I put it. Many children go into hospital in this country. Look, asthma, aside from COVID, asthma is the #1 reason why children don't go to school in this country. I think 1.1 million children have asthma, 3 or 4 in every classroom. So it is a common illness. Unfortunately, the stats are not great. We have the worst death in Europe, apart from Estonia. I don't think that's anything to boast about. And the number of children who die from asthma, sadly to say, that has not changed since Ella died. We have better medicine, we have incredible doctors, and yet children continue to die. And something for the audience to make a note about, the only time a child didn't die from asthma in this country was from the 23rd of March 2020 to the 4th of July 2020. And if you're thinking, what's so significant about those dates? It's when the first lockdown was imposed. It's the first time in this country no child died from asthma. And yet when Mr. Johnson opened the economy on the 4th of July, within just over a month of that, a 14-year-old boy died in London. So that's quite interesting. So I think that says quite a lot to us. Nitrogen dioxide went down by 50%, and that really, you can't argue with that evidence, really. It is what it is. But it's sad that is the only time children haven't died in this country.
Tell us about Ella's law and how important that is.
Yes, and the reason why I breathe is Ella's law has turned into a battle. Look, the coroner was very, very clear to the government, whichever government is in. Unless you clean up the air, people are going to continue to die. And it's not just about death. When I talk to doctors, look, I think all of us have seen, I think most of us have seen on our screens, 1 in 2 people now will get cancer. When I was young, I'm not that old, when I was younger, that was 1 in 9. Autoimmune diseases, Parkinson, linked to cancer. The steady rise of lung cancer from non-smokers, that continues to. It is something we all need to be concerned about. The gap in inequality in health begins to be wider. Grenfell showed us that. Our Prime Minister, I struggle with Mr. Sunak. Well, he just won't meet me, and I can see why. But he believes, he truly believes this mission he is on is going to keep him in number 10. No, he really does. He believes, changing things from 2030 to 2035, that is where the public is. He believes culture war, that's the way to go. Look, I got here yesterday, Sarah and I went out to have an Indian just round the corner. And I don't know what sort of Britain Mr. Sunak or our former Home Secretary were talking about. This kind of divisiveness constantly. But he's not, trust me, he is not a foolish man. I don't know what surveys he's done. He truly believes this is where the votes are. And he continues to go down this obstructive path. Look, we need to lower emissions. We have to. Otherwise, more people are going to get ill long term. Currently, 2.5 million people are not able to work. And no amount of Jeremy Hunt wanting them to work. And I've spoken to Sir Chris Whitty and other people. 7.75 million people are currently on the waiting list. After Christmas, I'm afraid, if things don't change, that's going to hit 8 million. And people sort of write to me and go, I can't believe what you're saying is coming. So we do need to, for me, by the way, this is about public health. And when I met the King last week, he said to me, oh, things are awfully difficult, aren't they? I thought you could say that again. King Charles. They are incredibly, but he, because he said, I've been watching, but he knows things are incredibly difficult. So I said to him, well, I'm going to write to you and I'm going to come and see you and hopefully you might be able to influence some people. He needs to do something because we can't keep on going on like this because excess deaths last year, 23,000. These are real human beings. And the COVID inquiry is just, I just sit there and watch the whole thing in embarrassment. But another thing to let the audience know, in areas of high air pollution, not only were there more COVID deaths, people got COVID more severely. So even air pollution impacts with COVID.
Help me here, Rosamund, because I talked about the anti-EV narrative across most of the papers. This is about the air we breathe. Why would you not want lower emissions from electric vehicles, cleaner urban air? What is the barrier that people see this as a threat?
Well, there are some things which are left over from COVID. Look, as British people, we don't like being told what to do. Let's be really honest about that. No, we don't. You know, stay indoors. No, we don't want to do it. You know, 6 foot apart, wear a mask. And I think some people just can't accept that things are changing. But things do need to change. Like I said to you, I'm coming from a health point of view. I'm not coming from an economy point of view. And up to 28,000 people die prematurely in the UK every year. Then people start screaming and shouting, where are the bodies? No, what it is it's linked to all non-communal disease. So every time there's a spike in air pollution, there'll be more asthma attacks, there'll be more heart attacks, lung cancers, as I mentioned. It's linked to all diseases. So people can calm down. There aren't going to be lots of bodies lined up suddenly with air pollution on death certificates. That's not how it works. But look at the health of the nation. I think we don't like change, and unfortunately the media is, I know you're part of it, but they're quite influential. Look, Quentin, it's taken you a while to come on board with the EV, but I'm grateful he's finally coming on.
I've come from the dark side.
He has. When you saw me, by the way, he was really enthusiastic about EVs, and I said to him, it's taken you long enough, hasn't it? But no, look, we aren't going to get air pollution down to zero, but you know, electric vehicles are the way to go. It's something we need to think about because I do talk to the Department of Transport. Every time there's a change of leader, every time it slows things down. And we are being left, when I'm going to Europe on, I think Monday or Tuesday, I'm going to the Netherlands and I'm just going to be embarrassed because when I get there, everywhere I go, there's so much more further than we are. When you live in the UK, you think we are the leaders. You know, when Mr. Sunak comes out and goes, world beating. And I think, yeah, only unless you don't travel, but whenever you go anywhere outside, it's true, we're being left behind. And I'm very grateful to people in transport who finally said, no, we're not going to change what we are doing. We're set to get things going at 2030, and we need to continue. And you will be on the right side of history. Every time you make those decisions, think about people, think about the poorest, think about children like Ella. You are actually helping them. And there are hotspots everywhere. Birmingham has its own hotspots. And what we do need to do, though, electric vehicle isn't just the only answer. We need to pump money into public transport. It needs to be cleaner, safer, more reliable, and it needs to be cheaper. That's ultimately what needs to happen. But you have a government who are really not interested in talking about those things. You know, I listened to the new Home Secretary this morning, and he was more or less indicating that it is all about the boats. As long as we get that under control, we are going to get back in power. And I thought, what about the 7.75 million people who are on the waiting list? They really are not interested. Sorry, they aren't. To me, it's about health. For them, it's about wealth.
In a minute, we're going to play a video of the Ella Roberta Foundation. In the meantime, would you please put your hands together and thank Rosamund.